Welcome to Grounded Guidance, the casual space for conversation with curiously intuitive minds as we explore fascinating topics that stretch our edges to think differently, live aligned with the pathway we are choosing each day, and propel us to move through life with a new lens on the world. Each week, we will explore in this space ideas that may challenge conventional thinking, encourage us to be intentional with our thoughts and actions, and grow through conversation with each other and with you. Join us.
And we're live. It's happening.
We're live.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Oh, Berly's back. I didn't even see her come in. Just snuck right in.
Surprise. We missed you.
I missed you guys. It was a long 2 weeks without you all.
Yeah,
I think our
I'm sure
viewers
were
missed you too.
Really missing us. Really missing us in Portugal.
Did you guys have some good conversations?
Yeah, they were interesting. Bigfoot and UFOs. Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, you missed our conversation about Bigfoot titties. And
Yeah. I looked back at that picture. Sure enough, there's some
Yeah,
boobies
titties?
on that Bigfoot. Yeah.
Really?
That
was a
that
female
Bigfoot
Bigfoot.
was probably a lady Bigfoot.
Is there lady Bigfoots, or are they all just like non-binary?
I would venture to guess that there's probably both.
Wow.
Anyways,
Anyways.
we're talking about
Yeah.
something way cooler than Bigfoot.
yeah, what happens to Bigfoots when they die?
Somebody says, welcome back, Berly, in the
Thank you,
comments.
Donald.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Ooh, Raphael's wondering, are we talking about afterlife or other realms of existence? That'd be good.
I
All
think
the
yeah, maybe.
So what do you know?
Did you do your research this week, Berly?
I did. I watched Soul.
Oh, it's a good one.
I've been planning to watch it for weeks now, so I felt like it was actually very fitting that I finally got to watch it before this one.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. What was your research?
I actually went down a little bit of a rabbit hole with the Bible, so that'll be interesting.
Ooh, I'm so interested because when I was in Portugal, like everything was about Jesus.
Yeah.
Like everywhere you turned was a Jesus on a cross. So
Big Catholics over there in Portugal, yeah?
big Jesus fans.
Who isn't, you know?
What do you know, Karen?
That we're all gonna die.
Yeah.
That's what I know.
Yes. Fact.
My mom always says none of us are making it out alive. So
Yeah,
So true.
We're all
unless
dying.
vampires are real, then that's a whole nother topic. No.
Maybe. I don't know. I hope not.
Yeah, that death. Something a lot of people don't want to talk about.
I was gonna say sometimes it's uncomfortable.
I've watched many people that I have known, family members and friends, that just will avoid the topic because they don't know how they feel about it, or they don't know what their views are on it, or they're conflicted with their religious feelings on it. The reality is we all die, so why not think about it? Right?
Yeah.
So I hope we can touch on some of those things tonight.
Yeah, I think
I'm
it'll be
excited.
a fun thing to talk about. Not fun, but interesting thing to talk about. I think I've always felt pretty calm about death. I think my mom always instilled pretty good perspective on it. We spent like some time at the cemetery. Cemetery's like a really calming place for us, which I know
Really?
seems bizarre to you, but I think it helps me connect with the death thing and understand it a little bit more, and not be so afraid of it as maybe some other people might be.
Jason Verdugo said mortality rate is 100%. Amen.
Yeah, for me, like death has been very relevant in the last year, personally, and then with like a lot of people around me losing a lot of close people very suddenly. So I feel like it's been a topic I've been talking about a lot in the last year. So to talk about it today with you guys, we're very knowledgeable.
Do you feel like you understand it more watching people, both of you watching people close to you pass in the last short while?
I feel like it's a little less scary, actually, because it's helped me understand how we are still connected to people who pass on.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it experiencing it closely has almost validated some of my own thoughts and feelings on maybe what happens after we die, and
Yeah.
what there is after this life. So yeah, I feel kind of validated. It's almost been a positive experience within a hugely negative experience, right?
Yeah, and then it also makes like living so much more important, I guess, and powerful, because you never know like when it's our time.
RoboNex 666 says, I think people fear dying more than death. Probably the pain part. That's probably true.
Yeah, it could very well be.
That's the worst part about falling, too. It's not the falling part. It's hitting the ground.
Isn't that like the opposite? The act of dying is not, whatever. It doesn't matter.
what does everybody think happens personally when you die? What do you believe?
Karen, can we start with you?
Death to me is a doorway. It's a transition from one realm to the next. We shed our physical, dense bodies and move into this, we're eternal beings. We're immortal. We just take a step in a new direction.
It's just like a simple, like, obviously.
I think we make it way more complex than it needs to be.
Sure.
So you think we're still... Yeah, like how would you describe what you think happens?
I think our consciousness lives on. The soul, the consciousness lives on. But we come here and incarnate here on Earth in this dense physical experience to experience suffering and all these lessons that we have mapped out. And we simply let that go at the time of death. And our consciousness moves with us as we traverse new planes and realms and then decide whether we're coming back into a physical body. And that dives into the reincarnation conversation, which I think we'll get into.
Michael's S says it's one of his greatest fears. I would say I think like not living to the fullest is like my greatest fear. Like not before you die. Like not fully living before
Getting
you
the
die.
most out of your life.
Mm-hmm.
I think Michael's referencing losing a child being one of his greatest fears.
Oh,
Specifically,
okay.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine this. Having children would scare me to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like your heart's outside your body is what they say.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't mean that.
So when we die, how I think a lot of the fear comes from, I grew up with a very fear-based perspective on death. And as I've evolved, I've learned that how do you choose to live each day? Are you living or are you existing through your life? If you are existing, I think the opportunity for more fear can be placed in that because we fear what we don't know or understand. And if we look at anything in life, change is inevitable. It's all around us. The seasons, the moon phases, the impermanence of youth, the changing faces and bodies as you age. We can ignore it, which I've watched a lot of people do. And then when you're faced with death, it becomes something that, I didn't think this was going to happen. Or we can face it and try to understand it before it actually happens. But I think for me, one of the things that has helped me is truly getting in there and living my life. Leaning into the decisions that are hard, leaning into the opportunities that push me and move me forward rather than just sitting back and kind of allowing my life to happen. I don't fear it as much. Living rather than existing. And don't you think that each day our choices are informed by not wanting to die? Think about all the choices that you make. Don't you think that death and trying not to die has some impact on the choices you make each day?
I'm constantly making decisions, hoping that it is
die.
making sure I'm not dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So along that thread and that thought is, why not live through those choices and make choices that don't always, seek safety, right? I'm not talking about bungee jumping and jumping out of airplanes and things that
where you really are maybe cheating death. But yeah, the moment we were born, we start dying. So how can we make choices that help us to live rather than exist?
I think there's like two like pretty concrete states of thought, right? Like the one G War slave has said, I basically believe nothing comes of it. Once we were buried or cremated, that's the end, right? So the perspective of there is nothing beyond this body, and then there's the other perspective of the more, I guess, religious perspective that we are more than this body, that this body is just a shell for our consciousness, and that after death we go to heaven, I guess. I mean, lots of whatever you want to call it. There.
Yeah, do you think?
So when no, go ahead.
Well, do you think your belief system like makes it more or less scary, almost? Like if you believe that
it
this
depends
is the
on the belief
option
system
you have, I feel like that would make it scary for me because it's like, well, shit, I better be out there.
Yeah. Like, oh, this is it? Okay. Well, I know that I think that there's comfort in believing, right? Believing that there's more to life after this. But I also don't feel like it's not just a belief, it's like a knowing. So
Same.
I think it's interesting to look at the conversation about immortality versus mortality. So, immortality, the state of someone or something that will never die or be forgotten. You see it in a lot of movies, right? What does it mean to be immortal? There's a futurist by the name of Ray Kurzweil who says that within 7 years, humans might be able to live indefinitely, which I think is really fascinating because would you want to be immortal if you had the opportunity to be immortal? This is a really interesting thought concept because I think when we are here Earthside, we're working through a lot of things. And this may not go along with the train of thought that works for you or what you believe. It's just throwing something out there. So if you have the opportunity to be immortal, how does that change what you're working through right now? Right? We have so many different things that we have to work through day to day, relationships and work issues and health issues and all these things. If we knew that we were going to be here forever, how would that change the conversation with how we lived? Knowing you would never die, how would you live?
I think it depends on what your definition of immortality is. So Jason makes a good comment: physically immortal or spiritually immortal? Because
I think my assumption is that we are all spiritually immortal. That's not an assumption. That's my belief.
Correct. Yeah.
But,
okay.
I'm talking physical immortality.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Physical immortality. Yeah.
Can I throw?
Yeah, I was thinking about the Earth's resources. I mean, we would deplete real fast.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a great thing. Also, I don't think I'm gonna go more spiritual here, right? I don't think that's what our Creator ever intended. Yeah. To be absent of the body is to be present with the Lord, right? Like that's just a common quote from the Bible, which kind of explains it. Like I almost think of this physical body as just a shell for learning.
Mm-hmm. there's also the question too of like, if you knew you were going to die, how would you live? And I think people end up checking off their bucket list once they know that the clock is ticking.
And you can do those quizzes online that tells you what day you'll die.
Really?
Yeah.
I think there's also, I mean, yes, there's that. Like, how will you live knowing that you're going to die? But also, how will you live knowing that you're spiritually immortal if you believe in that? Because there's an aspect to that too.
I don't think that's enough for people. I think that the religious influence has convoluted so much for people. I think we'll get into this, but talking about heaven, hell, and purgatory, and you know what those realms mean when we die to so many religious traditions. I don't know if spiritual immortality is enough for people trying to understand that, because I think there's so much fear around what it means to go to heaven, what it means to go to hell, and living this life free of sin or without sin, or to be washed of your sins, right? In this life, this is a religious perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think there's a lot of fear around that. There's a lot of fear that people struggle with. You know, how do I want to live my life? And they're informed by this fear-based religious perspective. I'm not saying everybody, just I think that informs a lot.
And I guess, what do you mean by that a little bit more? Like, in the religious sense that people live in fear because of religion?
Well, religion kind of puts a structure around
how you should live.
Around, yeah, kind of. I mean, some religions do, not all religions, obviously, but most religions put some sort of framework in place that you kind of have to, like, what is a sin versus what is not a sin. In my mind, it's not so black and white. It's not so cut and dry. It's more, do you believe in God? You believe in God, he will forgive your sins if you believe. And then, I mean, if you believe, then your spirit can be immortal in the afterlife. It's almost even less a heaven and hell thing for me, more just like a.
So if we look back in time, the first concepts of heaven and hell weren't even fleshed out into written documents until the first few centuries after Christianity emerged on the scene. The Greeks talked about the dead going to hang out with Hades and the underworld. And the Jewish talked about Sheol. I apologize if that word is not spoken correctly, but a nondescript gray place where the dead came together. And then as we move from early Christianity, from the Dark Ages into the Middle Ages, most of the teachings of the afterlife focused on hell. People who could not read the Bible, which talks very little about hell, were taught that liars, thieves, and fornicators will go to a place of limitless torment where they would be set on fire, crucified, and tortured. And if you look at what early Christianity taught us about heaven and hell, we have so many more descriptions of what hell looks like and then what heaven looks like. So what did we choose to focus on? Fear-based thinking.
Yeah, so I was going to say, is that like people, I mean, do people preach that because it makes you live less?
Well, I think that's up for interpretation, right? I mean, I think people that are, when you're very devout in your religious beliefs, many people say, no, that is not true. But I would say that from my perspective, Kim, I think that some do. Some religious beliefs do move in that direction. It's very much about control and fear-based thinking.
Yeah, I guess I meant the control part. Yeah, like to try and control people from acting a certain way.
Right.
I think what's interesting though is what I've learned about near-death experiences is people from like all different walks of life, all different religious backgrounds. They all have the same exact experience, like seeing the light and then like feeling the void, going into like a void, but also coming back with a lot of peace and clarity of like living without fear.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that they're offered similar experiences?
I feel like we all, I mean, whatever religion or whatever belief system works for you to like operate, but in the end, like there's only one real truth, right? Like we can all believe different things, but there's only one truth. And so I think those experiences show us what the truth is.
Near-death experiences are so interesting to me. Yeah, because what happens? Where, if the body's physically dead, where does the consciousness go? Right?
So
if they're pronounced dead, and where do they go? Where is that?
So I read some things this week that I thought were, a good way of explaining things from a perspective that I don't know. So the thing that I read was the soul is the life essence of the body. It's removed at the time of physical death. The soul referring to either the whole person, whether alive on earth or in the afterlife. And that there's basically three things, right? The body, the soul, and the spirit. And that the soul and the spirit are connected, but they're separable. The spirit is the immaterial part of humanity that connects us directly with God. The soul is the human consciousness. It can't exist outside of the body, though. So I thought that was an interesting perspective. So they basically broke it down as the body is just the physical being, the soul is the human consciousness, and the spirit is the God consciousness, part of your consciousness that connects you directly to God. I thought that was interesting.
If the body physically dies, so there's no brain activity, the heart has stopped, where is this information being recorded? How do people have this recollection of these really amazing near-death experiences where they, they see these beautiful landscapes and they're walking towards the light and they often see loved ones. Where is that recorded for them to remember? If the brain is offline and the heart is like they're clinically dead,
isn't it recorded in the soul? I mean, don't you think it's imprinted into the soul, and then when the soul rejoins the body because it's brought back to life, then that soul is just remembering, or it's being transformed directly back into the physical mind. But I mean, it's got to be imprinted in that soul, you would think. Otherwise, how would you remember or know? Yeah, and maybe it's less of a remembering, right? Less of a memory, more of a knowing.
Yeah.
Right? More of that feeling that you just know.
I think this is an interesting perspective about it. How
They
about
all
Mr.
experience the
Movies?
same thing. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Movies.
I'll play devil's advocate. I got it.
I'll read it because our little one just yelled, "I pooped" from the bathroom. So. I'll play devil's advocate. They all experience the same thing because a dying brain releases certain chemicals. It gives you one final sense of calming goodness before shutting down. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, non-believe. Oh, jeez.
Baby just pooped.
I know. Thank you. Go to bed now.
I was just coming to say hi.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, go. Okay, bye.
Gosh, she's the cutest.
I think the non-believers would say that, right? People who don't necessarily prescribe to any sort of belief system would say that it's just neurons firing, leaving one last imprint. You can't make it up. You can't make this shit up.
We needed a little bit of that. Okay, wait. So I listened to something today about the science behind dying, and scientists say that our brains function for 30 seconds after we die. But then there was accounts of people having near-death experiences where they were dead for about like 3 minutes, and then they came back and they were able to describe all of the things that happened actually while they were dead, because they were like above their body and they were able to see it after that 3 minutes, and they couldn't I guess that defeats the science purpose of it.
Oh, well, I can describe what happened for 3 full minutes, so that 30-second mark kind of overshot, huh?
So where does it go? Like you're saying, does it go into your soul?
I read an account of a woman that drowned, and she was swept down a river, a very fast-moving river, and she has no recollection from when she went under to when they pulled her out of the river downstream. Like, she doesn't remember any of that, but had this whole near-death experience and was perfectly fine and was able to, but they had to revive her. So, like, what happens in the void? That's what I want to know. Like, where did you go?
So Karen, like through your more spiritual experiences, when you've, I guess, communicated with people or interacted with people who were in the void, what did it feel like to you? Or is that?
There's, I haven't been able to see like them having that experience. I can see it from the outside. Like I've been able to see them above their body and see that they're making a decision whether they're going to come back or not. But I can't see it, or I haven't been able to see it yet, as if they're on the other side experiencing this.
Not from their perspective.
Right. Right.
But that is also like a common denominator too that people say, is that they had kind of this decision point where they could either move on or come back.
Yeah.
So you think
And
the choice?
What?
Well, besides, I guess when we talked about when your body is has experienced severe trauma.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a choice. To me, that's like assuming that I know what happens.
Right.
Assuming I know that it goes this way and that we all have this choice at some point. But so many people die instantly and don't have a choice.
Would depend on the
right?
circumstance, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
It's something I've thought a lot about, though. I mean, when they're in that when people are in that limbo area, do they have a choice, or is there just contracts that haven't been fulfilled here Earthside, so they're shoved back to Earth? You're going back.
Oh, you're not done yet.
Right. Less of a choice, more of a demand, right?
Oh, this is funny. Jackal says, I subscribe to the egocentric theory. The universe started with my birth and ends with my death. So you guys shouldn't fear as long as I'm around.
It's
a good
Jackal,
one.
I think a lot of people subscribe to that theory. Let's be honest. There's a lot of people that think the world revolves around them. I like that. That's funny.
Oh, Milner's got a good comment. My
Yeah.
position has always been consciousness is energy, and Einstein himself said energy can't be created nor destroyed. So in death, our energy has to go somewhere. The
I like
question is
that.
where. That is
Mhm.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a good
always-
energy is
perspective.
everything.
Always thought of
Energy
that
is
too.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah,
Energy
we
is
are.
everything.
Okay, I like that one, Milner. Thank you for bringing that perspective.
Yeah, it's a non-God perspective, but is also a God perspective, just depending on where you
Right.
believe
How
energy comes
you.
from. Yeah.
Mhm.
So let's talk about the religions and what people believe. So let's talk about the 5 top religions. Okay, so Christianity being the biggest, 2.1 billion believers. Islam, 1 billion. Hinduism, 900 million. Buddhism, 376 million. And Judaism, 14 million. So Buddhists believe that the body dies and disappears, but the mind goes on. The mind has existed endlessly and continues to go on and on. And we believe that there is a rebirth, which means removing all negative imprints from the past, all delusions, and just having no suffering ever again. Which I think is kind of interesting. So they do believe in this next, what some would call maybe reincarnation or another opportunity to do this again. Christians, there's a diversity of practice with Christians, as many of us have seen, right? If you've been influenced by the Christian tradition. Some Christian traditions say that when someone dies, they're sleeping and that they'll wake up again when Jesus comes again. It's more than death. It's a transition to another kind of life, which one of the things I have found so interesting is what to do with the body when somebody dies. So in the religious, we grew up Roman Catholic. And there was this big thing about not cremating the body. And I thought that was so fascinating. It's kind of an old school, tradition, but the whole idea is that the body will be ready and waiting when Jesus comes again. And I thought, wow, that's really old school. I think some more mainstream Christian traditions don't believe that so much anymore. But what do you guys think about that?
I actually, this is part of the deep dive into the Bible that I did. So, so 1 Corinthians 15 actually kind of addresses it, the resurrection of the body specifically, which I think it was kind of enlightening for me because, yes, growing up Catholic, there's kind of that thought. I know other religions have it. I think Mormons have the same sort of belief system. So if you don't mind, I'll just read it. So sorry, I'm going to read like scripture. You guys, I really apologize. Someone will ask, how are the dead raised? With what kind of body will they come? How foolish. What you sow does not come to life unless it dies. When you sow, you do not plant the body that will be, but just a seed. But God gives it a body as he is determined, and to each kind of seed he gives its own body. There are also heavenly bodies and earthly bodies. I'm going to skip forward here. So what will be with the resurrection of the dead? The body that is sown is perishable. So when it's buried, it's perishable, and is raised imperishable. It is sown in dishonor, is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, is raised in power. It is sown a natural body. It is raised a spiritual body.
Don't you think, though, this is a perfect example of how we can misinterpret things?
Absolutely.
Say,
Right.
can
So somebody
interpret
reads
that for
this.
me?
Yeah. Well, somebody takes this back in, the 1600s. I'm sure I'm way late. I'm sure it's way sooner than this. And they go, oh, there has to be a body there at the resurrection. Right. Okay. That is really absurd, people. Like, it's just, it's absurd to me. It's absurd that you really think when you unveil a tomb from, the 12th century that there's a body there, right?
Again, I think, it was just
ashes
a literal
to dust come from.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, they interpreted it very literally, like you will
Exactly.
literally be resurrected from the dead. And when people talk about the resurrection of Jesus, they talk about the resurrection of Jesus's body, which, according to the Bible, yes, the body was missing from the tomb, and
Right.
and they saw him physically.
Right.
I think that's more just an example of a spiritual body that was so highly evolved and powerful, had such powerful energy that they were able to make themselves seen, even though they were dead. So that's just kind of how I interpret it, and that's how 1 Corinthians 15 interprets it too. Is this it's not the resurrection of the physical body, but the spiritual body.
Ooh, I like that. When I was younger and we would go to church, I never resonated with it at all. Like the resurrection of Jesus, like how did he die and then come back? But you saying that actually makes a lot more sense of that when you have that spiritual, I wouldn't say hierarchy, but like that that knowledge, you can come back and present yourself to people. That makes a lot more sense to me than Jesus coming back from his dead body.
Yeah. Well, and in the in the story, it says after however many days it was that he that his resurrected body was went to heaven, right? Like it just disappeared. He was no longer there. Well, I don't think it's because his physical body was ever actually there. It was just his spiritual body that he was making present to everybody because he had the energetic power to do so.
Yeah, and how we've talked about ghosts and stuff in the past and spirits, they can make
an apparition.
Known. Yeah, like an apparition. Yeah, I like that.
So in the Christian tradition, belief in the afterlife depends on the denomination. Most believe in the resurrection of Jesus, the existence of the afterlife, and that moral choices that you make on earth affect whether you end up in heaven or hell. Catholics do believe in purgatory, the middle area, where the dead destined for heaven must go first for the purification of their sins. So Hinduism, 900 million believers, the oldest religion. They use fire as their means of communicating with the gods. They believe the human body is a composition of the 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, and void. The body in which the soul is hiding is supposed to have been doing fire rituals throughout its life, and the cremation is the ultimate sacrifice. The disposition of the physical body is done as quickly as possible after the death. There's no heaven and hell, although the soul experiences both good and bad on its way. Great souls get salvation, but most souls find a new body to get into and start a new life. That just makes me laugh. All right, let's go. Let's find me a new body. There are 41 sacraments in Hinduism, and the death rite is the 41st sacrament. And it's usually performed by somebody close to you, a living person after you die. I thought that was kind of interesting.
That is interesting. I didn't know that. I don't know much about that religion, apparently.
Yeah, there is some interesting pictures. Is it the Ganges River, the Ganges River? They have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, fires burning because it's said to be very sacred to be cremated down there by the Ganges River. The 2 places down there where they can cremate the body, and they say if you die there, then you can be cremated close to there, which I thought is interesting.
Wow. That is interesting.
We should talk about burial versus what is traditional burial versus cremation.
For me, it's just, it doesn't matter because the body is just an empty vessel, right? Like, bury it however you want, be cremated or whole, I guess, but because I believe that, like 1 Corinthians mentioned, that that our reincarnation is our spiritual body, not our physical body. So it doesn't.
I'm curious how many people
matter.
that are listening have a really hard time with, aside from your religious feelings about this, but many people have a really hard time thinking about being anything but buried. Because I think that's an interesting idea. If we haven't come to terms with or thought through what death really is, are we more attached to the physical experience of burying a body than releasing what this body held for us while we were alive? I like the idea of just becoming a mulch or a tree or something. There's some really cool companies that will do the decompose process on your body within like 45 days, and then you can be returned to the soil.
Yeah, there's
That's cool.
the cemetery that we buried your dad in. They have natural burials, I think is what they're called. So the body can be placed in like a decompositional basket, like just a wicker basket essentially, and yeah, you
it's
literally
more-
just
No, I don't-
grow
I
back
don't.
into the.
Yeah, no, I don't want that. I want my body taken somewhere. I don't want that done in a cemetery.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah,
See, you've got
I
a
want
thingy
I want me to
about
be-
cemeteries, yeah. And I don't know, is it because
I want
there's
to be-
energies left behind in cemeteries that you just can't get past?
No, it's it becomes this. Yeah, there's an interesting idea that the dead are actually there.
Oh yeah, no, I don't believe that.
And no, I don't either. But I think that we have some interesting thoughts about that, right? It's yeah.
So for me, cemeteries are a memorial, right? It's a location where you can remind yourself, where you can go to. Now, you don't need to have a cemetery or be buried in a cemetery for people to remember you, but it's a good opportunity to go and remember your family members, remember your loved ones, and reflect on the happy memories that you shared with them. A way of honoring them after they've passed. That's what the cemetery means to me, which is why I love going to the cemetery. But that's
But don't
also
put me
something
in-
that's
yeah,
just
don't put me
been
there, though.
instilled.
So Karen
Oh yeah,
wants to become.
I'm like cremate me and bury me there. That sounds great.
No.
Karen wants to become a tree or a garden.
Okay, we'll bury you into
Take me to my favorite
to the
places in
backyard.
this world. No, God, no. Do not confine me. Put me back to this earth in all the many ways that I've experienced, right? I don't wanna be in
just your body. You're not being confined. Your spiritual body is constantly existing.
But
Your soul lives on. It's just your physical body. It's just a vessel.
No, I know. Well, I know, but the physical body that housed my soul, don't confine that. That's what I don't. Release it. Release it to. I don't really even care about having a memorial headstone or anything like that.
Like put it in the ocean or something?
Yeah. Well, no, it's some of my favorite places on earth.
Okay, fair. I know it's kind of like our dead dogs that are sitting in our basement.
Oh dear. No, that's just
that
weird.
would be really gross, Christian.
Christian says you buried. I want to be stuffed and kept around the house, preferably in front of the TV.
There's some people that do that with their pets.
No, we have like 3 of our dead dogs in our basement.
You have their cremation. You have their ashes, though. You don't have
You don't have a
their
stuffed
stuffed bodies.
Oh, is that what he meant?
You know, like a stuffed animal, like
people get their taxidermy.
a taxidermied animal.
Oh.
So you can still cuddle them.
Ooh.
That's just
Yeah,
weird.
that makes taxidermy a little bit freaky for sure. Okay, that changed topics quickly.
My biggest issue with a full burial is lots of times people who want to be buried in a full casket want to have an open casket, and I don't like that.
Uh-huh.
And also, it's just not like as pragmatic. It's just not very pragmatic. Like, that's a big hole you got to dig. It's a big box you got to be put in.
Very eco-friendly.
Yeah, it's just a big hole.
I will be honest with you. When my grandma died when I was 5, they had an open casket for her, and it has traumatized me since I was at that funeral. I've had more reoccurring dreams about that event and how it just is not how I wanted it to be the final way that I saw her and
Lois?
finish things off. Yeah. So.
Dang
I mean,
Catholics.
that's a good way to
just
to
close
think
the
of it.
casket.
Right.
Shit. Come on.
We don't need to see you anymore.
Yeah. That was I remember my first funeral, and it was an open casket also. Damn Catholics, you know? Like, come on, just close the casket. I don't need to see you.
I remember when our great grandpa died and Kim touched him.
What? Kim touched him.
Oh, wow.
Our great grandpa.
Grandpa Joe, yeah.
Okay, so I didn't remember that one because it didn't.
Nah, you were little.
The most recent one I remember. Your dad didn't have an open casket, did he?
Yeah.
There was a viewing.
Oh, really? Did we just?
Yeah.
Did I not go?
We didn't go.
Okay.
I did. That's what
I feel
taxidermy would
we
look like.
saw it. Yeah, it's just not. It just doesn't look like them. They just don't.
No.
There's no soul, and you can tell. It just does not look right.
So at our granddad's funeral, when he died, so also a devout Catholic for his life, he chose to be cremated. And I remember there was a lot of discussion around whether, but he was a very progressive, trying to think more modern and be realistic about this. But I remember in the church service, I thought this was so strange, on the pallbearers are there where they would normally put the casket, they put his cremains on top of
rolled his cremains down the
Do
aisle.
you remember that? It was just the strangest thing. I thought all these rituals, right? We laugh about this, but these are all rituals that people have around the dead. And
I have to share with everyone because it's very cool. He used to make clocks. So that was like a hobby of his. He'd make clocks for all of us. And so when he died, after his ashes were put into a clock that he could not ever get to work. Like, he could not get this clock to tick for some reason. And so my uncle made a little like holster, if you will, on the back of the clock, in addition to the clock, so that his ashes could be put in that clock. And then we buried the clock. So that was pretty fun. He got to be buried in one of his clocks. But the fun part, the even more fun part, is that when we were at the cemetery, as we were getting ready to bury him, the clock started ticking. Oh, wait, maybe it didn't start ticking. It ticked the night before when Dan was making alterations to it to hold the ashes. It started ticking, and
I was going to say, did it start working again?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. Pretty cool.
That's crazy.
That was neat.
So yeah, that's what happens when we die. We can turn into.
Oh, okay. Jason makes a great comment. I think the origin of the open casket viewing is traditionally about showing people that you are in fact dead, proof of death. That could very well be, because I think there were a lot of like accidental burials back in the day, right? Like people would die, they thought they were dead because they didn't know how to feel for pulse or something. They're just taking a nap.
We can start letting people know that they don't need to do that anymore. I don't think.
That's an interesting thought, because has anybody in your life actually passed, and then you have these thoughts that, like, are they still alive? Like, are they like, did their passing completely, like, these just like little slips in the time sequence, like that has happened to me. Like, okay, specifically, I had a neighbor growing up who committed suicide, and it was very tragic for the family. And he ended up coming to me in a vision about 20 years after his passing, and it was so realistic. I was like, did he really die? Like, I don't know if he really died. And he gave me these specific these specific details about his death and how his death was not, he wanted me to go change his death certificate because his death wasn't correct. And then I thought, did he actually die? Is he not dead? Did he fake his death? Like, whoa, this is weird. So maybe that proof of death thing is really, there's something to that.
Oh,
That almost seems like maybe like instant regret. Like his soul had instant regret, and so it was trying so hard to tell itself that it didn't happen, that he wasn't actually dead. It's interesting.
Well, there was that woman that was buried alive like a couple weeks ago, and she wasn't actually dead.
And then she did die. She did end up dying.
But she was buried alive.
They buried her alive? That shit is still happening? Should have had an open casket. I mean, good thing she wasn't cremated. Holy hell.
Oh, true. Oh my God.
Did she end up dying because she was buried alive?
No.
Or she
was
just
already,
ended up succumbing to whatever
did.
illness she was dying from?
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah, false alarm.
There was the TikToker who faked his own death and then showed up in a helicopter at his funeral. So maybe that's why people have open caskets.
Oh, wow.
That
that was
recently
messed
happened,
up.
like the last couple months.
Yeah, that's so stupid. Don't do shit like that, you guys.
He just wanted to prove people that they didn't care about him. All the people that came to his funeral. I don't know how that. You came to my funeral, but obviously you don't care about me.
So I think it's interesting. One of the things that I think about, and I've actually seen some of this in the spiritual realms, but where do we go when we die? What do you guys think? What do you guys think happens? Like, so we've died. The body is ceased to exist. The soul, let's take for a moment and think that the soul lives on. Where does the soul go? Do we just go out and hang out and have Mai Tais, until we decide we're going to jump in a new body, or what happens?
We go to the great beyond.
Like the people close to you that have passed, what do you think they're up to right now?
I think the soul lives on in an energy. I think the spirit goes to heaven to be with God, and I think the soul lives on. The consciousness of our loved ones kind of lives on, and I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago. Perhaps the soul is just waiting to be reconnected with its other soul family members in another humanly body. To get to live that human consciousness out in a physical body again. Maybe that's the case for some souls. Maybe some souls reincarnate into other animals or something, like reincarnation. I don't know. There's so many things it could be, right? I think for sure the spirit goes to heaven and is
So I'm
reconnected
curious
with God.
why you think that's separate. Why do you think the soul and the spirit are separate?
I think the spirit belongs to God. It's our innermost self that is connected directly to God. It's a piece of him or her, whatever you believe God to be, right? The soul belongs to us. The spirit belongs to him.
I believe that we have I don't have this all figured out, but I feel like we have a higher self that's always higher, energy wise. And we come here into a physical body, but we're always connected to our higher self. And then that higher self, gosh, this is really hard to explain. Our soul is still connected to that, but we keep coming back to have a physical experience. But we're always connected to our higher version or spirit.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I don't know.
It's hard to have words for it, right?
Yeah.
Hard to have words for it sometimes.
That's why I really recommend everybody should watch Soul.
She just watched it like 3 days ago.
That is
Oh,
a
it
good
sounds
movie.
Is it?
It is a good movie. Yeah. You've watched it. It's a good movie.
No, sorry. I was reading a comment. Michael S. says, that sounds like Scientology.
I don't know enough about Scientology to know.
What you said, Berly?
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know anything about Scientology.
I can't say that I do either. Not enough to speak intelligently about it.
That's a whole other religion, belief.
So let's talk about Judaism. 14 million believers. In the Jewish tradition, there's a strong belief in the idea that people have a soul. The soul lives forever and the body is on borrowed time, and we give it back to God. I thought this was interesting. One of their traditions when somebody dies is people rip clothing. This is so interesting. To symbolize, okay, when a person passes away, people rip clothing. It stems from the Bible. People would rend their garments to symbolize someone being torn away from them. And the sound of hearing something ripped is often very emotionally charged. And then there's this other symbol. Even if you were to rip clothing and have it mended, the garment never goes back together the way it once was. There's a scar. There's always a reminder.
Oh, that's kind of beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah. So afterlife beliefs are individual in the Jewish tradition. Jews focus more on their life on earth, but most Jews believe there is an afterlife, but it can come in many forms. Some believe in reincarnation, while others believe in a world to come, a heaven-like paradise. And then Islam, 1 billion. In the pre-Islamic world, there was a notion of fate, with time being the determining agent of a person's life and death. This is reflected in the Quran, where the pre-Islamic Arabs say there is nothing but our life in this world. We live and we die, and nothing destroys us but time. Yeah, I think that's really interesting to hear about these different traditions.
So from people who have like passed on, I know, Karen, you've gotten like a lot of messages from people who have passed on. I've had more, like, since my dad passed, I've had experiences of like recognizing his signs. What do you feel like? Where do you feel like they are?
Yeah. Well, I've actually been shown this in a couple of different visitations. The one specifically that I remember, the neighbor that committed suicide. This was, now mind you, this was 20 years after he committed suicide. So time is really nothing in this existence of where we're just energy, right? That we don't keep clocks and watches and go, it's
not linear.
And to show up, right? But he was very stuck in this. So he appeared, his soul essence appeared very grayish and ashen to me, and he was very much stuck in trying to work through the patterns of this suicide. And it had been 20 years, and he wanted me to change the death certificate, and he wanted me to do this without, his former wife knowing. And I just thought, oh my gosh, this is tasking me with a lot. And I refused, but I didn't even, I'm like, I'm not even going to have this conversation. But what I think is interesting is I believe that in the Bible, they talk about the many houses, right? The many houses that exist, many mansions, or the many houses. I believe that's kind of what it looks like on the other side, that we have these different levels that we ascend to. not necessarily good or bad, just based on where our soul's at and what we need to learn. And specifically with this situation, with this guy who committed suicide, I don't believe he had moved out of one house in the 20 years since he had passed. He was just so stuck. When I see people that visit that are evolving, they're very vibrant. They appear very youthful. They appear like they look like their best self, which is interesting because sometimes I'm like, whoa, I don't know if I recognize you. But the colors are really crisp and really sharp. The other thing that's interesting too is this hotly contended idea that we have this life review when we die. So it's a chance for our soul to review the things and decisions, every decision that we had made while we were Earthside, and see how we learned from it and how we grew and how we evolved. And then from that, at what point in this afterlife do we need to continue to move through these different lessons? Do we need to take on another body and reincarnate? Do we travel, without a body for a while, learning these lessons from our other soul family? So that's interesting. I've been taken through a life review, not a full one, but a partial one. That is an interesting experience. I think
basically just
that it's like majorly judgmental, and it's not. It's just a chance for you to. It's like going to school and saying, "Did you learn these lessons?" Right?
yeah.
What are the lessons that you set out to learn? How much of it did you learn?
And then you think we come back, and if we didn't learn the lessons, we learn them again?
I think we have the opportunity to come back again if we choose to come back again. The Earth is our most dense. It is the most dense experience to come here. We can move at the speed of thought without this physical body. So to come here, Earthside, is a choice that you are making to really learn that lesson. So, I do think some people decide to come again and again. But I do think there's a lot of learning happening on the other side before they jump again. I say that like they're jumping into a body, but that's what I picture it. This body today, no.
Boing, boing,
Right.
boing. Do you think he was stuck because he didn't commit suicide?
Oh, that's a good question.
That's why he didn't want his wife to know.
Well, there was a lot of secrecy around his death. I remember this. And he was in a lot of financial trouble. And I remember I got the phone call from her when she let me know that he had died. But then that was all. We never really knew why. I mean, I knew how he did it, but we didn't have all the, as you don't with a suicide, right? You don't really have all the answers. I hadn't even considered that. Whew.
I wonder if he doesn't want you to tell his wife about changing his death certificate because, well, yeah, either she killed him, but we won't go there because that's just rude. Or he's just still trying to keep a secret from her, right? Like he was trying to keep these financial secrets from her, perhaps, and felt that was his only way out of them, and now he's continuing to try and keep the secrets.
That is the story she told us.
Okay.
He had hidden a lot of things from them, and even in his death, there were things she didn't know, and it was not only the shock of his death was so surprising, but then all of the financial mess.
Dang.
So, I thought that was so interesting about changing the death certificate. I thought, Yeah, I think he said, could you change it to be an accident? I think that's what he said. And I said, no, I don't. I'm not getting involved in this. Thank you, though.
I think that had to do with life insurance.
Maybe.
Like you don't get life insurance money if you kill
Right.
yourself, but if it's an
Right.
accident, you do.
Most life insurance policies, as a former licensed life insurance seller, suicide is only if you do it recently.
Oh, so like only
because
they'll
like,
still
I got a
pay out
life
for
insurance policy,
suicide
now I'm gonna shoot
as long
myself.
as it wasn't.
It's to avoid that. If it's got to be like a couple of months or like a year, and then suicide doesn't matter.
Okay, that's interesting to know. So it's just not an automatic null and void.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think with his visitation, what I learned so much from his visitation was that there's so much happening beyond this physical existence that of course I knew that from other visitations too, but it was so fascinating from him to see how much he was just so stuck. He was so stuck.
This Jackal makes a very good point. You can't get into heaven if suicide, and some religions believe this, right? Like if you commit suicide, you can't get into heaven. So perhaps he wanted you to change his death certificate so that he wasn't stuck in this gray place.
Well, I mean, God would know if it was suicide or not.
Right.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, like who's he kidding, right?
Yeah. It's not the death. It's like it's certain. The notary said it was suicide, so you're going to hell.
Do you think people, like, souls can get stuck, though, if they're, like, not at peace with how things ended?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I've experienced that so many times. I call them earthbounds. They get stuck in this realm between Earth and wherever they're moving to. You know, whether that's these different levels, you know, to evolve, or it's
Is that how you
consider and call heaven?
Yeah, is that how you see them as levels? You don't necessarily resonate with the term heaven, correct?
Not entirely, no.
Okay.
Yeah, not entirely. Because it's not, heaven identifies for me as like one place. And I think we're all so different and it's such different levels. It seems so.
It's more like a tiered house. Heaven is a house
like
that has multiple levels,
yes,
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
I feel like, I'm trying to say this politically correct through my okay, so I've experimented with drugs before, and through that experience, I had kind of the epiphany that heaven and hell is on earth based off of your experience here.
Mhm.
And when we pass on, it's just kind of like, it is just levels of energy almost. It's not like you either go here or you go here. It's like life can be either heaven or hell. But after that, we're still.
I believe that. I believe that, Berly. Yes, I do. I believe we have the ability to create that existence right here now on Earth. Yeah. Yeah, that is, and not this illusion that it's beyond us, right? It's beyond.
Yeah, like it's a choice, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jackal says, Berly just trying to get to the higher level.
Pot talk with Berly. Pot talk.
Uh-oh.
That's a different podcast.
So I just closed a poll on how would you like to be laid to rest. Cremated won with 44%.
Only 44, huh?
Buried was 32%. Other was 12%. And eaten was 10%.
Eaten. Oh my God.
Only our viewers would say that.
Personally, I hope I'm well seasoned.
Well, Mr. Movies put it out there as an option.
Right, so that is.
Oh, wait a second. Hold on.
I wouldn't have even thought that way. So You've watched too much Jaws in your life.
It's the Hannibal.
We just finished watching Hannibal.
Yeah. Our viewers
Oh.
have been watching Hannibal and Silence of the Lambs and all of these things with us, and
She talks about.
I do. It's
Hannibal
it's
a
an
lot.
issue. I just kind of think like
I'm just accepting.
it's
my fate at this
probably
point.
more common than we think.
So Berly, the Druids. So if we look back in time, the Druids, the Gnostics, the Cathars, the Druids believed that above us is heaven, below us is hell, but Earth is where both good and evil exist, and all of this exists within the realm that us humans have the free will to choose either.
Yeah. Okay, so the Druids. I need to
Druids, yeah. Mhm.
do some research on that.
Yeah. Which is, an interesting.
How far back did the Druids go?
Somebody's
Beginning
gonna
of
have to help me
time.
with that.
I don't know.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Somebody that knows, please chime in.
I think when I just traveled to Portugal, that's why I was gone, everybody. But over there, I got really curious about like religion, like how long humans have been around, like hundreds and millions of years, right? Like a long time. And religion just really being kind of picked up in the last couple 100 years.
Thousands.
Thousands of years. Thank
Yeah.
you. But I guess like the religion that was over there, like they talk about the 1500s and the 1400s and how it's kind of evolved. But yeah, I guess for us to be around for that long, it's crazy to think that when the Bible was created, that was like, this is how it is, even though we've been around for so much longer than the Bible.
I think keep in mind the Bible is just the written form of lots of communication, right? For as long as we've been alive, we've been communicating just word of mouth, right?
Stories.
Yeah,
Around the campfire.
oral traditions and things like that. So the Bible's maybe the first iteration of a written document, or close to the first iteration of a written document, but it's also not black and white, and it's not cut and dry, and it's not clear. The Bible is very complex and convoluted, and you can and up for interpretation too. I mean, the people writing it had interpretations of their own also. So I mean, that there's a reason why so many people participate in Bible study. It's because they're all trying to help each other understand what it maybe means to them, because it's so complex.
Here you go, Berly. Evidence of Druids goes back. BC.
Before Christ.
See, yeah, like I can't.
That's a long time ago.
The concept of time, of how long we've been here, is just like, whoa. Like, we've been doing this for a while.
That's just recorded history that we know of.
Right. Yeah.
True.
I have some creation stories and myths that I think are fascinating. So every culture, I think Berly, you'll get a kick out of these. So every culture has a creation story that explains why we die. So in some African tribes, God wanted to see who was worthy of immortality. So he set man to race against the snake, but man got distracted by a beautiful woman. Imagine that. The snake got to God first and was declared the winner, and the snake got the prize of immortality. So what's interesting about that is the image of the snake and our adversarial relationship with humanity, right? I mean, think about how the snake is and our relationship to the snake with everything. We have this adversarial relationship about it. So in the West African kingdom of Dahomey, regarded snakes as immortal because they appeared to be reincarnated from themselves when they sloughed their skins. Snakes were often also associated with immortality because they were observed biting their tails to form a circle when they coiled, and they formed spirals.
Okay, I'm sorry. I got a little distracted by the little one. Where did this story come from?
This particular one was the West African kingdom of Dahomey, but the story is just some generic African tribes about God wanted to see who was worthy of immortality. Man got distracted by a woman. The snake got to God first and was declared the woman. Declared the woman and declared the winner, and the snake got the prize of immortality.
It is interesting how
Mhm.
snakes and serpents are always like a very symbolic. They're very symbolic in like how we are created and like Adam and
Mhm.
Eve and stuff.
Yes. So in Africa, in many parts of Africa, the serpent is looked upon as the incarnation of deceased relatives. So there's something that I read recently about if you see a snake in the home of somebody shortly after they've passed, they consider that good luck because the deceased person has come back to visit you. I would say no, get out.
Wait,
You have
that's
a story
cool.
about that.
Yeah. So my mom is like deathly afraid of snakes.
Mhm.
Like if you show her even a dead snake, she's like screaming, running the other way.
Mhm.
And the other day, she got out of her car and started walking up to the house, and a little snake went across her path. And I promise you, any other time she would have seen a snake, she would have just like freaked out. But this time she had like a sense of calmness because
Wow.
she knew it was my dad.
She knew it was your dad?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Which
Well, now
like it's like one of those like it's her fear. Like her biggest fear in life is seeing a
Yeah.
snake. And so for her to feel calm seeing a snake, that's cool that you just said that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think this is all kind of coming full circle.
It is.
Should we go deeper into that topic?
Yeah, you should.
First, I have to share.
Mhm.
They came in and maybe is greasy. I'm like, what happened here? We have like chest cream, like an all natural Vicks Vapo Rub thing that we use when they're congested. She has proceeded to plaster all of it on her face, her arms, her legs. She is covered in this chest cream. So
I bet
that's
she smells
fun.
good.
She smells great. She's gonna smell like it for weeks. It's never gonna come
Menthol.
off.
I need to have a bath tomorrow night, anyways.
Does it create like a menthol sensation?
Yeah,
Is
this
like
is like all
icy
natural,
hot?
so
The
it's
cooling.
more like it's not even really cooling. It's more like lavender and
Oh,
it's just
okay.
natural smells, but it definitely has a smell.
You're gonna have to watch her.
All right, Eric, you were gonna say something?
I was just like going deeper into the personal experiences of recently lost loved ones.
Yeah, like
was
how
wondering.
they've shown up.
Yeah, so I'll start. So a couple of weeks ago, I got a visit from Mr. Movies and Berly's dad, who, by the way, I have not met. Well, no, I have met.
You met him
I've met.
at our wedding.
That's true, but I did not know him personally. And he told me that he's been very curious about this podcast. And he was the one that gave me the idea for this topic. He really wanted to hear about what happens when we die. And I think you guys have told me that was something he struggled with, right? The thought of what happens next. What happens when we actually die?
Yeah. Well, he had ALS for the last 10, 12 years, so the thought of death was constantly on his mind because he had a, disease that was just counting down the days until it would take him. And he also had a lot of near-death experiences too. And Berly, you could explain those better than I can.
I explained one of them on one of our last podcasts, but yeah, there was a lot of. I mean, he had a trach, so that he was breathing because of a machine, and there was multiple moments where that machine either was disconnected or stopped working or got caught, and he died, and he came back every time after being unconscious for several minutes. And
It's
What?
not funny. It's not funny. I just he was a resilient little shit. Like
he really was.
he
Like,
had 9 lives, that guy.
honestly, I mean, and he ended up passing because of his trach, like being off for too long, because he was not going out any other way. Like, he was hanging on. But yeah, I think when he came back from those near-death experiences, he always had a lighter sense to him and was a little bit more happy to be alive, I guess.
Yeah, I think his fear of death stemmed more from not wanting to leave.
Yeah, missing out.
Yeah, not wanting to miss out on all of the family things going on. Not so much in not knowing that what the future brought, but just not wanting to miss out on what happens here on Earth.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. That's my biggest fear,
Yeah.
right?
And Mrs. Movies, your dad had a near-death experience as well, right?
Oh, I think he died. I think he probably died a couple times. Yeah. Yeah, he had, I think it was anaphylaxis one time. He just stopped breathing because he had gotten, I don't know, stung by a bee, I think.
Oh, wow.
Was gone for a little bit, I think, but came back and had a clear knowing that what lied ahead was much better than what was right in front of us. So,
Karen, when our dad did visit you recently, you said that he told you something that only he would have known, and you didn't know him or anything about this. So I think that's really cool that was a confirmation of getting that sign from him that it really was him.
Yeah, I think he had maybe been trying to get in touch for a little while. It is hard for somebody to get in touch with me if I don't know them, and I've only had short references with him. But yeah, he told me this really funny thing. He said, "Show them my broken pinky toe." Okay. And I thought, because, it's easy to say, oh yeah, your dad visited me, right? And then instantly like, oh yeah, that's so funny.
oh, great! Pinky toe.
He didn't break his pinky toe. What is that about? Of course, but it sounds like he had quite the sense of humor, so he would have used something silly to connect the dots for them.
And how you know
you
he
said,
did break his pinky toe. Like,
yeah,
you said that
recently?
he was. Oh,
I don't think so.
no. You said that he was almost surprised when you saw him, right?
Yes.
Like he acted surprised.
Kind of like, like when you're walking like in a store and then you turn around and you like look right at somebody and they kind of are like,
oh, shit.
Maybe they were,
okay.
Yeah, like, oh, you noticed me, right? It was kind of like that. Like when I finally made the connection with him, it was like, oh, this is actually happening. Like, this really can happen. like
he'd been tapping on your window for a while and you just hadn't heard him, and then all of a sudden you tune in and he made a noise that you recognized and it snapped you right in. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think he was shocked that it was that, like, the connection was that simple, for somebody that.
Oh, watch out. He's a talker, so you might be connecting with him a lot more frequently.
Good to know. Good to
know.
When you saw him, was it him in his physical body? Or was it like more of a
it was like a bust of him. So from here up.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was quieter, I think, because it was so surprised. When you're like, you're calling and calling and calling and nobody's, and then somebody answers and you're like, wait, what do I say now?
Wait. I forgot how to have a conversation.
But he was very specific. this episode, What Happens When We Die, and he's been super curious about the podcast. So
Yeah, and here we are. Yeah, he's really good at showing up as animals.
well, then we had this conversation about snakes, and that's interesting too.
Right.
I think my favorite incarnation of him was the hawk. Because his name is Mike. And that would have been really funny to him.
He would have thought it was hilarious.
Mike.
My cock. My cock.
Hey, everybody look at Mike Hawk. That was the joke. That was the joke he was telling us.
And only you would have put that together.
Absolutely, yeah. Kim's just like, oh my gosh, look at this beautiful hawk. It's my dad. And Eric's like, is it Mike Cock?
I got his joke.
Yeah, you carry on his sense of humor. That's the best part.
On the subject of relatives reaching out, may we as viewers submit personal stories to an email or something to that effect? I'm sure we all have plenty of cool experiences to share. Yes, we're going to be launching our email soon because I was supposed to do that 2 weeks ago and I forgot until just right now.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we're going to put it in the header of the YouTube channel. For this exact reason, we hope to do kind of like a mailbag or readers' stories and share those things because they're super interesting to us as well. So thank you for reaching out and mentioning that.
Yeah. So keep tuning in. We'll soon be putting the email address on all of our stuff, so you can submit your questions or comments.
Haas, Ryan wants to know how it feels to have that experience.
Oh, which one about the connection with your dad?
I'm assuming that's what he's talking about. Is that?
Yeah. I feel very honored that souls do come to me and come to me for a specific reason, to share with their loved ones. If we are energy, when we move beyond this physical existence, which I do believe that to be true, getting through this dense experience can be challenging. So when they do, I don't take that lightly. I take it. It's just my greatest honor to be able to hold that and share that with others. And it's been neat to be able to make those connections for people. Because they are moving so quick. You can move at the speed of thought, right, on the other side. But then we have to be able to connect with that in our dense experience. And that can be really hard if you aren't, if you're not slowing down enough. I know a lot of people will say when they're grieving, I just want to see a sign or feel a sign from my loved one. And often that's the hardest time because grief can just overwhelm completely what is happening. So it's in the small moments where, not necessarily when you're not grieving, but it's in the small moments where you're not consumed by it, that sometimes that will pop back. And I'm sure Mrs. Movies and Berly can speak to that, having gone through this recently, that you feel that connection when you're not completely consumed by it. In the days and weeks after it, I'm sure it was hard to feel that, your person that had passed.
Yeah, but also like what a gift that you are given that you can give people that sense of peace, knowing that they are still connected to us. Because when you said that he broke his pinky toe, like, how would you have known? Like, you wouldn't have known. And so,
well, he made it clear. He goes, you need to make sure they. Well, he didn't say anything.
He knew how to communicate through you
He showed me
let
that.
us know, and that's cool that you're able to give people that peace.
Yeah, it's
honestly,
neat.
I think the pinky toe was probably more for Brooke than anybody.
Was it?
Yeah, I mean, Brooke is the one that knew that. Yeah.
Huh. She's the one that chimed in. She was like, "Yep, he definitely broke his pinky toe." And I think she's maybe the more skeptical of the family.
True.
The one that questions things just a little bit more.
Yeah, I have connected with Mrs. Movie's dad. We had a pretty special relationship in Earthside, and then in his passing, it's been really wonderful to connect with him. What has been really interesting about connecting with him is that we shift when we die. So, the way that we were in our human form is not necessarily how you see them in their non-human form. And his prophecy of being able to see what it was like on the other side, and how, he knew where he was going, right? I mean, he knew what that was like. But I think I've told you this several times. He is just like moving and shaking over there. Like, he is just like kicking butt and taking names and telling everybody what to do. And he's very happy to be in charge, and, making sure the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and but doesn't miss a chance to tell his family that how proud he is of them, And I know that some of that was maybe missed Earthside in certain instances. So to be able to share that with you guys has been an honor. So
Yeah, I mean, it's been a blessing to have you be able to share some of those things and validate the feelings that I have since he's passed.
Yeah, it's a wild world there on the other side. I'll tell you what, in a good way, but it's wild.
and his personality seems, like kinder, but still the same. Like, he was a get shit done kind of guy.
Yes.
And when he wanted shit done, he wanted it done right away, and would dictate that it was done. So he was like a true manager, So it does seem like him. Yep, that does seem just like him, making things happen, a mover and a shaker.
Yeah, when I have connected with him, it has been like he's lost the part of himself that had a hard time telling people. I think he was really soft in ways that maybe he didn't show people, and all of that was shed when he released the body, right? And so it's just simply, this is who I am, and deeply spiritual, deeply kind and wonderful, and our earthly visions of that it's hard because that's not always what we saw. But
I couldn't have told you what he believed in. I couldn't have told you what he thought about death or the afterlife. I didn't know some of the things about his near-death experiences until after he died, when my mom shared it with us.
Oh,
so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's interesting to hear what happens when people, and I love to see them moving along, moving at this pace that is evolving for them. Yeah, they evolved here, but it seems as if your dad seems to be evolving very quickly. So still in charge. That didn't leave.
Yeah.
There's some things that don't go away.
Some things are just ingrained,
Yeah, I agree.
Speaking of ingrained, have you told the spoon story on here?
I don't know. Have we told the spoon story?
No, we haven't.
That's one of my favorite stories.
I think you're gonna have to tell it, because I don't know if I don't often remember it after it comes through. So,
well, after he died, probably a couple months. It's probably been a few months after he died, right? You had gotten a message from him, and it was a long message. I do recall it was very long. And you sent it to my mom. Yeah, you sent it to my mom, just like saying, "Hey, Bruce reached out. This is what he had to say." And towards the end of the message, you just said, he kept showing me a spoon and telling me, make sure she doesn't throw away the spoon.
Oh, because you guys were going through a lot of stuff at this point.
We were cleaning out, right? As you do after somebody dies, you clean.
I think we're about ready to start construction on the other house.
Yeah, yep, we were. I think we had just kind of about started that whole process. So we're cleaning lots of things out, making space for all of our crap. And he just keeps saying, don't throw away the spoon. Don't throw away the spoon. And my mom's like, what spoon? Like, what are we talking about here? Like an actual spoon? And you were like, I don't know what this means. I kept asking him for clarification, but he was dead set on just the spoon, right?
Oh, and he did say she'll know when she finds it. She'll know. Yeah.
Yeah. And so my
and
mom's
I remember you were like, we're going through the drawers and we're trying to find these spoons.
Like what?
And like
freaking
what is it?
Spoon? And then
you guys were going through a lot of stuff. You guys have a lot of stuff you were going through. Like,
yes. Well, we have lots of past family members things too. Like when his parents died, we basically took most of their stuff and kept it. When his grandparents died, we kept it. My mom is the keeper of the family heirlooms. So we had lots of crap. And so I don't know why, but I was like wandering through the kitchen, like, okay, what does this spoon look like? And then kind of dawned on my mom, like, oh, well, I mean, maybe it's those little baby spoons that we took from Gran's house when we cleaned out her stuff. And in their silverware drawer, when we were cleaning out my grandparents' things, there were some little tiny silver, a spoon and a silver fork and a little knife. And then like another little spoon, just the little baby spoons. And so my mom kept them thinking, oh, maybe these were grandpa's spoons. Maybe we should keep them. She didn't know. My dad probably didn't even know that we kept them. Honestly, they were in a cupboard, just kind of tucked away.
I think your mom figured out he never used them either.
No, they weren't even my grandpa's. Yeah. I think my grandma like got them from probably a yard sale or something stupid, right? But my mom likes small miniature things, so she kept them anyways because she likes small miniature things and they're tiny spoons. So a spoon, a fork, a knife, and another little spoon. And so I was like, okay, well, let's look. And you had said in the message that you couldn't decide it's either engraved or it's like an ornate spoon or something. Like there's something special about this spoon. So I'm looking at the spoon, they just look like plain old silver freaking spoons.
But like, I do remember you're like, we're digging through and we're looking at every spoon and we're tearing the hutch apart and we're digging through it. Like, oh, I can only imagine what this looks like.
We'll find these spoons. I'm about to put it back. I'm about to put it back in the cupboard. Yeah, I'm about to put it back in the cupboard because I'm like, well, these are just plain old spoons. There's nothing to them. I turned it over just to look to see if maybe there was a year on it. You know how they stamp silverware with years and manufacturers and things like that, to see if maybe there was something there. And sure enough, one of these tiny little spoons had an engraving that you could barely make out. I mean, it was really hard to see. But in the engraving, it says, eternally yours. And that was it. I was like, oh, that's the spoon. That's the spoon you didn't want to be thrown away. The eternally yours spoon. Yeah. That none of us knew existed. It's perfect.
I love that.
He sent you on a little scavenger hunt.
He sure did, yeah.
A little message for your mom.
It was a message for my mom, eternally yours.
And then we talked to your mom after that too, and she said, or maybe she didn't. Sorry, I didn't talk. I think you talked to her. She said that she definitely feels like they are eternal partners in this life and many lives, right?
Yeah.
I think she had felt that way. Maybe I'm making that up.
No, she definitely feels that they were soulmates, eternal soulmates. So, which was kind of shocking to me, to be honest. They had a unique relationship, and as we all do, as we all have really unique relationships, and so much happens behind the scenes that we can't understand of each other's relationships.
Well, and I think this is what's been for communicating with the deceased. For me, this is what's so healing for me. And then to be able to share this with other people is that what we see in the physical existence is just so beyond. It is such a small microcosm of who the soul actually is, right? It's so easy to judge based on what our eyes see or what we hear or how they live their life, how people live their lives. And then to see people on the soul level, it is just mind-blowing. It is just mind-blowing. I mean, they're all the things that were just really petty while they were human just fall away. They just fall away.
Evaporate.
Yeah.
All the traumas and stuff that we kind of build up.
all
Yeah,
the
well,
unnecessary things, all the things that seem important now here in this body are not
and
important.
the things that we're conflicted by when we're human, right? That not that they're not working through, other traumas, right, in the energetic realm, but it's so interesting to see this higher timeline that it's so beyond what was happening in the physical existence. And they're operating from this space that is, he is moving things so fast with his mind and his thought process, and things are just accelerating at this rapid pace. But because he wants to, he's a soul that's evolving, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a choice there for some. So
Yeah.
I'm curious what you guys. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, on regards to that, things moving, how we move at the speed of thought, and Berly and I's dad, since he's passed, because he was trapped in his body for the last 10 years, he's been getting around and out like crazy since he's passed.
Oh yeah,
And
getting around. I like that.
Towards the end of winter, there's an experience. So when my father was first diagnosed, we had people send us cranes, origami cranes, paper cranes, as well wishes and stuff. And at his funeral, we handed them out back to each other. We told everybody to take one, and Mike will be with you forever. And one of our good family friends used to go snowmobiling with him all the time. Took him snowmobiling with him, the crane. I think probably February. And Mrs. Movie's mom she's a very spiritual person, and she's like an astral traveler, and she can sometimes just sit there and let things wave over her. She came home from work that day and said she had a vision of my dad snowmobiling. A couple hours later, these family friends posted on Facebook that they had taken my dad, the crane,
Oh my god,
snowmobile.
that is so cool.
There's a picture of them
So-
standing in front of a snowmobile holding the crane.
with the crane.
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's just crazy. So
That's beautiful.
it's definitely makes you, I don't know that there's something on beyond. At least that strengthens my belief, at least.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's amazing that we're surrounded by all these intuitive women that can give us these messages and like clarity of what's happening.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for those
he's
of
also-
you that. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say he's also showed up a lot as a bird. So birds. The night that
A
he
hawk.
passed, a hawk. Yeah, my hawk. And the night that he passed, he landed on the roof above my parents' bedroom at sunset as a big great horned owl while we were all sitting outside on the deck. Yeah. Let go of his legs and got wings.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. What were you going to say, though?
I don't remember.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. It'll come back.
I recently ended a poll too, saying, "What do you believe happens when we die?" And 10% said reincarnation, 22% said nothing, 30% said heaven, and then 37% said other or a combination of things. So, I mean, I believe that you eventually go to heaven, but you can also be reincarnated. So
I had this really interesting experience when I was, two things, two stories. When I was about 7 or 8, I was camping with a friend, and I remember having this kind of existential crisis. I mean, can you imagine this at 7 or 8?
7 or 8.
Yeah. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. And what's going to happen when I die? I'm going to miss my friends and my family. And what are they going to do without me? And I was just Like I remember I was on this camping trip that this happened. And I thought, oh, I've got to contend with this. I've got to come to peace with this. What is happening? And it just became this like deep visceral fear. And having, raised in the Roman Catholic Church, I took that route for a while. And then I remember I was probably 10 or 11 sitting with my dad in a restaurant. And I had this thought come in. Obviously, it wasn't a thought. It was definitely spirit talking. But it was, what if this is not the end and I can become a bear or a lion or a caterpillar or a tiny little ant or all these things. So I expressed this to my dad. And my dad goes, nope, this is it. This is all you get. This is one life. This is it. No more. And I'm thinking, oh. Now, my dad was not Roman Catholic, so that's not where the beliefs came from, the religious influence. But
he was probably just uncomfortable and trying to shut down the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in my family, death was just a really hard conversation to have. And then the idea of having the conversation of what exists beyond us when death happens is a hard conversation for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And
especially with little kids. It's hard to have it with little kids too. Yeah.
So I have this. I opened the whole door about reincarnation, and then
nope.
But it wasn't until past life regressions where I was taken through the death portal and many times taken through the death portal. And then taken through all these lifetimes about, what did I do in all these different lifetimes that it all just kind of really came full circle and resonated about these reincarnation and these lives upon lives upon lives, and how they kind of form these little imprints, So yeah, I've had to work through that, not having people that, really understood it around me. So it's okay if you don't understand it. Just continue to ask questions.
Stay curious.
Yeah. I mean, that's what this is all about.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well, a couple comments that just kind of were thrown in. Robonex says, I think we lose all sense of self-consciousness or self or consciousness. We become one with the universe or God again. It's the ultimate ego check. G-War Slave said, Walt Disney Sr. has frozen his head hoping to be brought back to life or transfer his consciousness to another being. Thoughts on this?
Gosh, yeah, that is...
Yeah, that's for
real.
Yeah, that's for real. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's so interesting, right? I mean,
I think you'd have to keep his brain alive for that to function. I think freezing it's not going to help.
Yeah, cell death happens with freezing too, so I just don't.
You don't think AI can?
I think that's a far too literal transition of literal interpretation of consciousness.
I think I think it goes back to the immortality. If we chose physical immortality, could we really exist till the end of time? I just can't wrap my head around that. I just can't. Even if we have AI that takes over, right?
Yeah.
So we don't believe in vampires.
No, vampires exist.
They existed on my college campus. It was kind of frightening.
Really? Oh, kids being
future
vampires.
Episode coming soon. Vampires.
Ew.
I think Baylor was real too.
Let's see. If we're energy when we die and heaven exists outside the dome surrounding flat Earth,
Jackal.
maybe the high radiation Van Allen belt filters out the bad energy souls from entering the third level heaven. Dang, Jackal getting all deep and shit here.
Wow, Jackal. We're glad you're back.
I don't even know what these things mean.
About flat Earth. I love
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the high
No.
radiation Van Allen belt?
Yeah, I don't know what that is either.
But keeps out bad energy souls from entering the third level of heaven. Are you thinking, Jackal, are you thinking that there's only 3 levels, right? 3 levels to this house of heaven?
Oh,
The third.
heaven, purgatory, and hell.
Oh, entering the third level.
You know what's
Heaven.
interesting about this though?
Interesting.
The bad energy souls, right? Okay, so do they? Yeah, I don't know if I want to go there. Never mind.
Okay.
Never mind. Yeah,
Save
I don't
it for
wanna go
another
there.
night.
Yeah.
And Jackal says the flat Earth talk is a lot less depressing than death talk.
I don't think this has been too depressing. I think it's interesting.
I don't know. Talking about flat things is pretty depressing.
Put my ashes in fireworks so I can light up my wife's life one more time.
Oh my god, that's so good. That is so good. Yes.
And I saved another one that I just liked. I would just want to reflect on it again. So we don't have to reflect on it now, but I'm going to keep
you
it
already talked
starred
about
just
that
for
one.
a little bit.
So one of the things before we wrap up here that we didn't talk about is the whole concept of the guardians at the gate of heaven or hell. You know, and the Christian tradition, sometimes it's Saint Peter or Archangel Michael.
Mhm.
The ancient Egyptians. I just had to share this because I think this is so fascinating. And those of you that have some sort of religious belief may have heard this, but this is rooted in the ancient Egyptians. They would weigh your heart on a scale, and those that had a heavy heart from things like sins, greed, or cruelty were eaten by a being called Amma, which was part alligator, lion, and hippo all in one. If your heart was lighter than a feather, you were deemed worthy of heaven. Depending on when you die, will your heart be lighter than a feather? I mean,
Right.
Let's think about this, right?
Like how much blood is in your heart when you die? Like, are they measuring it right after death or like months after death? Because I feel like the heart is probably lighter months after death.
Well,
than
no.
it is initial.
You're thinking physical. They're thinking like they're talking like
Spiritual heart.
Well, like do your sins and the greed and the cruelty that you have endured in your life, does that make your heart heavier, or does it make it lighter? Kindness and peace and love, where you coexist, does it make your heart lighter?
Who's the weight? Who's the judge of the weight?
Well, this is what the ancient Egyptians, this is rooted in the ancient Egyptians, which I think is interesting because a lot of religious traditions have taken on this
with the sin and
yeah.
Okay, it's evolved into sinful heart. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
There was one more comment that Milner chimed in about the Van Allen radiation belt is everything that involves the solar winds outside of our protective magnetic field.
Oh, so like Mrs. Movies and I were talking last week. We just all need to get those silver blankets and shroud
Faraday
ourselves in them.
cage.
Yeah.
There you go.
Not a Faraday cage. Just the blanket. I don't want to.
You
I
know,
don't
my
want
hat?
Oh.
My hat from last week?
Yeah, I like your hat, right?
Wait, is this about the UFOs? Like not getting
Yeah, we
abducted?
took some weird turns last week.
We did.
Jackal says the Van Allen belt is why we can't get to the moon.
But so we really haven't been to the moon?
Depends on who you ask.
And ladies and gentlemen, we will not be talking about that on a future episode.
Really? Can you talk about it now then?
We're gonna have to call this podcast the
Conspiracy show. Yeah.
There is, yes.
There's a fine line between curiosity and conspiracy, right? Like, also,
I think that there is.
conspiracy
yeah.
is curiosity most of the time, though.
I think as long as you're
Well,
asking questions.
I think people's curiosity often gets misconstrued as conspiracy. But
Well, don't you think that people's curiosity is what creates most of these conspiracies?
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think people are also quick to judge curiosity and say, oh, they're
You're
just
just a
conspiracy theorists.
Conspiracy, yeah.
When somebody's probably just being curious and considering alternative, I don't know, solutions, alternative universes.
We just watched Moonfall. The moon is a construct.
The moon's construct. Oh, that's a weird movie. Don't watch it. It's fine.
Moonfall. I haven't seen that.
It's not very good.
Don't waste your time.
Pot talk with Berly.
Ryan says the Mike Cock episode.
Some of you were laughing tonight. See, it wasn't all depressing.
Yeah, I don't think death has to be scary.
I would agree. I don't think death has to be scary.
Yeah. I didn't know Portugal, it was legal in Portugal, but yes, pot is legal in Portugal. I didn't try it though, so I can't say if it's any good.
What, Portugal pot? Is that what you're talking about?
Galaxian heard Portugal's the best place to buy pot.
Oh. Pot talk with Berly. We might be losing Berly here soon, you guys.
That's a whole nother podcast.
I hope not.
She can do that on another day of the week.
All right. Do we have any grounded guidance for the week?
Yes, our grounded guidance for today on the What Happens When You Die episode is, as you traverse the many landscapes of your own mind, remember you can choose where you want to be and how you wish to exist. We are mere products of our environments. If you don't like the view, get up and move. Change your view. We are mere mortals, a microcosm of space and time, yet unique here and now. Belong where you are, entertain what you want, and be with yourself. You don't need fixing or completing, you just are. Give rise within you to a space that you can choose to change your mind and live your life freely and openly. Rest easy, warrior. You are special and unique. Look long. This isn't your first ride, nor will it be your last.
That was quotable.
I know. I can't wait to listen to that back.
I like that last line a lot.
Yeah, I did too.
All right. Thank you all for joining us tonight. If you haven't already, hit the like button down below.
Almost 50.
And tell your friends about us if they're interested in having curious conversations.
Yeah.
And next week we'll be back with something else we're not sure about what that will be, but
maybe Mike
I'm sure we'll figure it out.
Something curious. We appreciate you guys coming each week. It's been fun. It always is.
Absolutely. And we'll post the email address on our channel information page tomorrow. So if you are interested in sending in any comments or questions, feel free to do so. We'll check that when we can.
Cool.
All right.
Cool.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Like.
Welcome to Grounded Guidance, a casual space for conversation with